All right, folks, I'll make the start. Welcome to the July meeting of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee. I'm going to pass over to John for the notice and the summons and the roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. To all members of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the committee, which will be a hybrid meeting to be conducted remotely via WebEx and physically here in the Council Chamber, Tuesday the 4th of July, 4 o'clock. Alderman Bresland.
Online, John.
Alderman Cook.
Online, John.
Alderman Hussey. Councillor Boggs. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Duffy. Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Harkin.
Here.
Councillor Heaney.
And Shaw.
Councillor Jackson. Councillor McGinley.
And Shaw.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor O'Farrell.
And Shaw.
Councillor Tierney.
Here, John.
Thank you, members. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, John. And that moves on to the broadcasting statement. I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting and training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council's privacy notice may be found on the Council website. So moving forward, item 4 is the declarations of members' interests. If anybody has anything to declare, you can do it now or throughout the meeting as we come to those items. Item 5 is chairperson's business, and we don't have any today, so we'll just move forward to item 6, which is the matters arising from the open minutes of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee held on Tuesday the 6th of June. Do we have matters arising? Councillor Heaney, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. It's GSP 81-23, the discretionary rates grant. It was just really, like, I dealt with this at full council in relation to the legal action that we're taking forward, but it was news to me and good news to me that when follow-up revealed that Fermanagh Oma were also considering joining that process. So it was really just to ask for an update from John, if there is any, in relation to that. Thanks, Chair.
Through you, Chair, no further updates since full council, Councillor Heaney. Obviously, as matters develop over the summer, if there are any further important issues, we will email members or contact members directly with regard to it.
Thank you, John. Any other matters arising? Councillor Boggs.
Chair, it's just under GSP 86-23 and around the A5 public inquiry. I'm sure all our members are aware that today a motion will be brought before the Dáil in 26 counties by Sinn Féin, and it just would be remiss of me not to reiterate again our party support for the A5. The motion's calling on the Irish government to recommit, to revalue their contribution towards the A5 project for 50% of that project. And I just think it's very telling that, again, we're looking towards Dublin in relation to this project. Obviously, as a council, we're keeping it very much on our radar. But I think it again proves the failure of recurring British Secretary of States and British governments to invest properly in the infrastructure here. So I do hope that that motion passes through the Dáil. I'm sure that's what we would all hope, because after the public inquiry and moving forward, hopefully, to the formation of an executive, we would want no more delays in getting this project over the line. So just to note that, Chair Garmogget.
Thank you, Councillor Boggs. Is there anyone else wishing to raise any other matters arising from last month's meeting? No? Okay, we'll move forward. So item 7 is the update on the hardship fund, pages 15 to 18 in your pack. And I'm going to pass over to Una for that report. Thanks, Una.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to give you an update in terms of the review of the hardship emergency fuel support programme, and also to seek your endorsement in terms of how we intend to take that forward plus additional funding that's been proposed by the Department for Communities. Members, for the benefit of some of our new members, there's some background information in terms of the context that we set up an all-member hardship fund working group last March, whenever a motion came before Council, and we decided that we wanted to have a particular intervention to try to help as many people as we possibly could with dedicated intervention. And a budget of £308,000 was set aside, and you can see within the financial section the different sources where that funding came from, and that was a one-off amount of money that Council had been able to identify. Members, it was the intention to prioritise fuel support and also additional advice services. And we undertook a programme last December, which you're all very familiar with. We received over 5,500 referrals within a very short space of time, and we were only able to support over 2,405. So members, you'd asked if we would undertake a review and to try to capture some of the key learnings, which we have been doing. And what we'd like to do is present those findings to you now at a special meeting of the Hardship Fund Working Group in July. Members, and also at that meeting, we'd like to give you some further information in terms of the budget that has been proposed by the Department for Communities, which is a new non-recurrent budget, which they've set aside to help people in hardship. Members, and you can see within the section of the report that the allocations that they've provided to each council area is based on population, and it's proposed that our council area would receive in excess of £316,000. Members, also the department has issued a directive whereby they've identified that any underspends in the previous financial year where they had provided money for the cost of living support and also post-COVID support, that any unspent money could actually be used now towards this hardship fund that they're setting aside. So members, we're advising you that there's just almost £125,000 left within that. So that gives us a budget of just over £441,000 towards a new hardship fund programme. Members, as you know, it's absolutely critical in terms of the co-design of any of these type of interventions, engagements with local partners, those partners who are delivering support, both local charities, our advice service partners, our local growth partnerships and the locality planning groups. So we propose to meet with them on Friday just to understand what they currently are dealing with in terms of the demand for their services, what they consider would be the priorities coming forward in terms of the autumn and winter period, and that we would bring back those findings to you at our 28th of July Hardship Fund Working Group meeting, where we'll be more informed in terms of what the potential priorities might be, any audit considerations that we might have to take into consideration, as well as legal, and also members that you would apply the learning from the hardship programme, the emergency fuel, and we'll be able to provide those findings to you. So in terms of the budget, you can see in terms of the financial budget where the sources of that funding would be coming from. We'll propose following the meetings in July and August with our local partners an outline of what that proposal would be, with the intention then of spending it come the autumn and winter period. So members, it's to seek your endorsement of the approach that we've outlined, and that will take you back in terms of the 20th of July to the Hardship Fund Working Group and spend a lot more time in terms of discussing the detail of what might emerge for this programme. So very happy to take any comments or queries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anna. First indicated speaker I have is Councillor Conor Heaney.
Thanks, Chair. As they say, this is welcome news that this money now is available to Council to try and address in some way some of the cost of living and pressures that people are under. You know, we all know, and I know the working group are focused on this, but despite all the hard work of Una and our team, the way the money was previously distributed was far from ideal. And it had its critics and that. And so I really welcome the news and the report that the Council are planning to meet with the sector, the community sector, on Friday to try and work out what would be the best way of using this effectively and maximising the impact of it in local areas. And in that vein, like I suppose we would feel that the less that can be spent on any implementation, bureaucracy or for that, and then the more that can be actually distributed out on the ground is the way we should be looking. But I'm sure that that those discussions that are happening on Friday will bear fruit, and we'll come up with the best method to address this. But it's good news, as I say, and in that vein, I'm happy to propose the items. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Conor. Councillor Farrell?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Una, for the report. We all know that the cost of living crisis hasn't gone away. The inflationary crisis hasn't gone away, and the interest rate crisis hasn't gone away. So it's good news that, first of all, that Stormont recognises that these crises have not disappeared, and it's further good news that Stormont is actually going to make money available to combat this. We stepped in last year. In the absence of support from Stormont and in the absence of support from Westminster. And we created the Emergency Fuel Support Programme, the first of its kind in the North. So we understood the challenges that were faced by communities and we acted accordingly. So it is good news that the department is making over 400 grand available to tackle this crisis. And we obviously support the approach. We should be engaging with the local growth partnerships, the food banks, the charities, the local advice providers to get as much knowledge as possible. The scheme we delivered was first class, but we need to make sure that any future scheme that we deliver, is as good as it can be. So we support that approach, and we'll obviously engage fully in the working group when it comes up at the end of this month. But this is positive news. From Stormont, we acted last year when Stormont didn't, so it's good news that they understand that this hasn't gone away. Thank you. Happy to second the proposal, obviously.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Harkin, online.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Una, for the report. And I agree 100% that we need to engage with local partners to make sure that whatever funding is brought to the council is distributed in the best possible way to help people. But I don't think that this is enough money. I mean, look, we as a, I am disappointed at the funding, and we put £308,000 ourselves as a council into the hardship fund last year. And now the government is offering us 316,000. I mean, this is a pittance, unfortunately, compared to what we actually need. And the other problem with this is that this money is not going to be available for quite a while. And we just heard reports last week from local food banks that they're, overwhelmed because of the number of people that are trying to access help. And we also know that the children are now on holiday. They're off school, and the holiday hunger meal has been taken. The funding for the holiday hunger meal has been taken away. I mean, it was bad enough that we lost that for Easter, but now it's going to be 2 months of families. Many of the most hard pressed families are going to be getting absolutely no help from government. And so I think that this money, I know we're supposed to say we are thankful that the government is doing something, but I don't think that this is enough. Because we know we spent 308,000 and that helped 2,500 people in the district with £100 payments. And we had to shut it down after 8 hours. And, more than another 3,000 people didn't get any help. So when the department comes to us, more than 2 years into a cost of living crisis with their proposal for a hardship fund, and they're offering us basically the same amount that we put in last year that we know was way below what was needed. I don't think that we can turn around and say thank you to the department. I mean, this is half a loaf stuff. So I think I want to propose is that we as a committee write to the department and ask for this funding to the district to be doubled. And even if they double the funding, that is still not enough. And I think I think it's sending a message to the department that this isn't good enough. The funding isn't good enough. The way that they've acted over the last 2 years with the cost of living crisis hasn't been good enough. So I'm going to put that proposal into in the chat box there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, do you have a seconder for your proposal? Councillor Donnelly's seconded, thank you. Does anybody wish to speak on the additional proposal? No? People, go ahead, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. I've no issue with writing to the department to see requesting that the amount allocated is doubled, quadrupled if needs be. No issue whatsoever. What I do have some concern about is, will this hold up the allocation? And if it does, that would be a bit of an issue. But if we could just get that clarified, that would be, I think it would be useful before we agree. You know, Councillor Harkin's right about the holiday hunger payment and all of that. But the last thing we want to do is delay any fund that is there. Councillor Heaney, I think it was, spoke about getting this caught up in bureaucracy. That's not where we want to be going. So if this is holding it up, that may become an issue. But if we could get that answered before we're asked to take a stance on this, please.
Councillor Jackson?
Yep, Chair, and just on the same vein, we always want to strive to ensure that the maximum amount of support is provided to those that need it, particularly in these challenging times, as Councillor Harkin has outlined. Coming into summer months, there's many families with young children that are worried about the loss of the holiday hunger payment. But if we would be concerned if there was going to be any barriers that were put in place, we'd be reassured if the structures that are put in place and if that work, a collaborative work with council and a community sector is there, and those structures are in place, they roll out the best scheme possible, where we can have a mechanism where we can get the support to people as quick as possible and as easy as possible. Regardless of what the ultimate budget would be, our focus is to ensure that there's no undue delays. So we've no issue with the proposal as it is, and the caveat that it's not going to delay anybody getting the support that they need. It was well rehearsed around the shortcomings of the previous scheme, and a lot of that came on the back of that there was very limited resources that went along with it. We always wanted to do a lot more, but we as a council just we didn't have the resources to do that. Councillor Harkin's right to highlight the fact that that we're facing the exact same problem, but we can't ignore the fact that there was well over 2,000 people that received support through the previous scheme. And if this scheme rolls out, hopefully we can maximise that. And that's our focus and our intention as part of this. If we can maximise the budget so we can help more people, brilliant. But we're not going to deny people support at a time when they drastically need it. So on the basis that it's not going to cause a delay, we're happy to support the proposal.
Members, I understand the department has already identified what budget it currently has available, and we're asked to put forward proposals on how we would want to spend that money. There's nothing to say that we couldn't identify additional proposals should there be additional money made available. So, you know, on that basis, it shouldn't actually hold up the allocations that we'd want to make. But we'll get that clarified for the meeting and take it back to members.
Okay, so on that caveated, I think we have consensus for the proposal also, as well as the recommendation in the report. Yeah, okay, so we'll move forward with those. Alderman Hussey, go ahead.
I think Councillor Turney referred to it there. Why put a limit on it? Double? If we're accepting that proposal.
Was already passed
And
there.
I take on board what was said earlier on too, that, by the way, apologies for late arrival. We can work with what is being sent to us, yes. Allocate more and we can do more with it, is what's been said. So that should be reflected in the motion rather than just saying, right, we want double.
I think I can understand what you're saying, but at this stage, we have already passed the proposal. So when we had indicated if anybody wanted to speak on it, you didn't. We understand where you're coming from and I don't disagree. It's just that we have now passed that proposal, so the letter will go to the department and we'll move forward with the work. Okay, so that concludes that report. We will move forward to item 8, which is the annual equality progress report 22-23, and I'm going to pass over to Ellen for that.
Yes, through you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek members' comments and approval in respect of the Council's annual equality report for the year 2022-3. As indicated in the report, as part of our implementation of our statutory duties under Section 75, and also in respect of our responsibilities under Section 49 of the Disability Discrimination Order, we annually present to the Equality Commission a progress report, and this is set out in a very prescribed template, which again we reflect in our documentation. As highlighted in the report provides information under a number of headings, which include Equality and Good Relations, Equality Scheme and Disability Discrimination Act. And I'm pleased to report that once again, we've made some progress in taking forward our Equality Action Plan and our Disability Action Plan, with the majority of actions having been completed or are in the process of being delivered. The report itself, in front of members today, highlights a number of initiatives that have been taken across, and I would highlight the fact that as we take a mainstreaming approach to both equality and good relations, these initiatives are taken forward across the organisation and by different sections. And as I say, the recommendation in front of members today for your consideration that is subject to your comments, that the progress report is approved and submitted to the Equality Commission by their deadline date in August. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Ellen. Does any member wish to speak on this report? Alderman Hussey, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Page 21, the Ulster Scots Language Week, the 1st to the 25th of November. And I know I involved myself in some of that. The Irish Language Week, I always heard that an Irish mile was longer than an English mile, but it appears to be that a week, an Irish week is also longer than the normal week. Perhaps that's the sort of length of week we could do with, to deal properly with council business. No complaints on the fact the Irish Language Week lasts from the 1st to the 17th of March. I can understand the 17th of March scenario. But would it be possible to contact the Ulster Scots Agency and say, look, can you give us a longer programme that we can work to? And it is an equality report, so let's have some equality. Thank you.
That's no problem. We'll get that letter sent off. Does anybody else wish to speak on this report? Councillor Jackson?
Good, Chair, and just happy to, on behalf of Sinn Féin, to propose we accept the recommendation and approve the response to the Equality Commission. And I suppose we all take our obligations seriously in relation to our Section 75 groupings. And it is important they recognise that there's a very strong emphasis on good relations and the challenges that are being faced by council as a result of cuts to good relations grants and stuff like that. it's still very important that we remain focused on building good relationships, good relations right across our city and district, and it's good to see that emphasised in this report. So we're content to support the recommendations and approve the submission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Money, will you take one?
Thank you, Chair. And just to pick up on Councillor Jackson, content a second just on behalf of the SDLP, and just acknowledge the report was, you can see as you read through it that council and officers have, looked at all the demographics through the Section 75 programme, age and profile and language, and which is a broad sweep and a general overview of all the good relations and all the programmes that we endeavour to promote throughout the year and ahead. So on that basis, Chair, I'm happy to second the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Money. That the recommendations have been proposed and seconded. I don't hear anybody speaking against that, so we'll move forward to item 9, which is the nominations to the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association, and I'll pass back to Ellen for that report.
Through you, Chair, this follows on from a discussion that was raised at council meeting, and the purpose of this report is to seek members' views in respect to the correspondence received from the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association, which is included in your papers. By way of background, the report highlights that at the annual meeting, nominations were received for positions and responsibilities in each of the 4 years, ending in June 27, and one of those positions related to the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association. And accordingly, nominations were taken for the 4 years as set out in paragraph 2.3. Subsequent to the meeting, we received the correspondence from the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association, basically indicating their preference that the Veterans Champion and Stroke or nominee for the Reserve Forces Cadets Association be based on a 4-year term, and that there also be an initial position of a Deputy Veterans Champion, again, ideally from another district electoral area. There was, as I said, some reference to this at the council meeting, and there appeared to be an indication from one party about a preference for a 4-year term, but also that concerns were raised that if any change in what we've actually have affected decision making during the nomination process. As I say, in terms of the recommendations, obviously, and as I say, there are implications in terms of the 2014 Act in terms of how we actually go forward in terms of filling positions of responsibility, and also in terms of our standing orders, in terms of rescinding motions. But in front of members today are the recommendations are, and this is based on, as I say, the discussion in terms of the council meeting. It appears that, that we don't have an agreed approach in terms of the 4-year term, nor do we have a rescinding motion at the present time. And in that context, probably the only way we can respond is to say that we cannot accommodate any requests at this time. Now, obviously, that position could be reconsidered if there is an agreed approach and a rescinding motion. The only other option that we can probably do in terms of taking forward the sense of the correspondence we have received is that members may wish to consider nominating a Deputy Veterans Champion for each year of the term, or again, subject to members' views or other period to support the existing nominees. I wait direction in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Alderman Keith Kerrigan online.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. I'm not a member of the committee, and I do appreciate you let me pass comment on this item. As has been stated by Ellen there, and it was stated by Alderman McMorris at a previous meeting, at a previous full council, sorry. As regards to if we had known that was going to be a 4-year term, we would have been more minded to maybe amend the choices that we would have picked under the hunt at the AGM, Chair. So again, given the circumstances from the AGM, I wouldn't be minded of going back through the whole issue of repicking and resenting. It would be my thought, and again, I'm not a member of committee, so that's entirely up to yourselves. But I would be more minded with maybe the second option. I do understand under the DeHaan system when we had the AGM that a number of the independents and other political parties refused to nominate to that position of the Reserve Forces and Cadets Association, and I would be minded, now I stand to be corrected, that the same stance would be taken in regards to a deputy position. So if it would be minded, Chair, and again, maybe it's something needs past the full council, I would have thought an option would have been to have had a discussion with the parties and the representatives, and if that position had been shared alternatively between the parties which did hold or were willing to take on the position of reserve champion. In other words, as it is, Alderman McCready and the Ulster Unions have it in year one, that the Democratic Unionist Party would take it in the deputy chair position in year one, and vice versa for the term, if the other parties and independents were not minded to put the names forward. And whether that can be brought forward as a suggestion at this meeting, or whether that can be then, if it needs passed at full council, or would we require names? I'm just asking the possibility, can that be done, and would you require such a proposal put forward? Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, and subject to views of Ellen, but if such a proposal were to come forward, it is an entirely legitimate proposal. If that's what you're asking, Alderman Kerrigan. Whether it would be approved by other members is another matter, but it's certainly a legitimate proposal.
Alderman Hussey, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I take a slightly different view than Alderman Kerrigan, as you might suspect. I'd remind members of committee that this is the one that quite a few parties passed on. It was the last pick. We chose the first year position, but it turns out now that the request is for the 4 year. We would look at the second alternative, which is that we consider the appointment, the first pick, as a 4 year appointment, and that we look at the position of deputy veterans champion for the years and work on that basis for the 4 years. Thank you.
So just through you, Mayor.
I'm not the mayor.
You're not the mayor. Yeah. Through you, Chair. That proposal, if it were to come forward, would require rescinding notice of motion. So that couldn't be tabled today as a proposal.
Does anybody else have any other views on it? Councillor Jackson, go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, it is disappointing that that these discussions hadn't taken place between the two interested parties prior to us coming into committee. I was hoping to come in here and that there would be an agreed solution between the Democratic Unionist Party and the Ulster Unionist Party. It doesn't look as if that's the case, but just for clarity, we have no intention of nominating anybody onto this particular body, and we trust that both unionist parties could work together and come to a solution that would work for everyone. But in the absence of that, we're still hopeful that that could happen, but in the absence of that, in relation to the first recommendation that Ellen had outlined, that we would respond saying that we couldn't accommodate, that may be the only course of action. But again, I'm hopeful that there can be some resolution between the two unionist parties within our council. Thank you, Chair.
In response to that, I'm not sure, but I understand the group leader did, in fact, try to have some talk. And I suppose the other question might be, which position in your choice would you be giving up? If you decide that this would have been priority,
Thank you. I suppose what we're hearing from Alderman Hussey is that the UUP did reach out and the Democratic Unionist Party were unable to accommodate in this request. Surprise, surprise. Look, whatever will be, will be. We'll not be nominating anybody for a deputy position on this particular board. And at this stage, if there was to be a vote on it today, we would be abstaining from the vote as well. I think there's plenty of time between now and full council, hopefully, for the two unionist parties to have that conversation and hopefully come to a position which they can agree on. But that's our position on it, is we've no real position on it, to be honest.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Donnelly, go ahead.
Chair. Chair, I think the whole conversation, the whole idea that we have this position on this council is obscene. And I just find the whole conversation, the fact that we're sitting here talking about it, is distasteful, in the very least, given what the citizens of this city and district had suffered at the hands of British armed forces. I think it's time that this position was gotten rid of, rather than waste any more time of this council discussing it. Thank you.
Chair, I propose deferral of the recommendation.
Do you have a seconder for that proposal? I'm noticing that Alderman Kerrigan is in the chat box with the proposal, but he's not a member of committee, so he can't actually propose it. So have you got a seconder to defer that, and we can maybe move forward? So
Chair, as we haven't got a proposal within committee for that.
well, we do. Alderman Cook has come into the chat box to say she's happy to propose that. Now, you don't have a seconder for your proposal at this stage, so we will have to move to the alternative proposal from Alderman Cook, which is seconded by Alderman Breslin, that the deputy veteran champion will be alternated between the DEP and the UUP, and that'll, like that rotation that's on the screen. Have we any? Go ahead, Councillor Tierney.
I don't want to hold things up, but you did say to Alderman Hussey you don't have a seconder for your proposal. Not that I'm going to second it, but just what was his proposal? I didn't understand. Didn't know. Defer, okay.
Was to defer
To
the
allow
report, that's, but there was no seconder. So,
supposed to have taken place.
so at this stage, we have a proposal on the floor that is seconded, that's on the screen. Does anybody wish to speak to it? Go ahead, Alderman.
For clarity, that will go to full council and can be further debated there if necessary, as I understand it. Yeah, that's okay.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the item before we move forward? No? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Jackson.
Just to clarity, just for clarity, our group will abstain.
Good.
Chair, we'll be abstaining as well. And I know Alderman Hussey made the point that this is going to go back to full council. And I, in many ways, agree with Councillor Donnelly. I would prefer that we move on. But from my quick counting, there's 14 members of this committee online today at this meeting. And this position, at the request of this organisation, is going to be changed by 2 people. A proposer and a seconder. I just don't see how how that sits right. In terms of, I would assume Alderman Hussey's going to vote against this proposal. He's already made it clear. The rest of us, I assume, are going to abstain. We have the proposer and the seconder going to vote in favour of this, and it's just doesn't make sense.
Okay, so that would be a recommendation that would be going forward on the minutes to the full council meeting. Councillor Harkin's looking to come in. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say that we were, People for Profit would be abstaining in this vote as well. And it's obviously taken up too much time already.
Okay, so we are going to take it to a vote just for the clarity, even though people have indicated. And then that'll shut the item off until full council. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Chair. Is it wrong of me to assume that there are 2 voting in favour and everyone else is abstaining?
3
voting in favour? So Alderman Breslin, Alderman Cook, Alderman Hussey, all in favour? Everyone else abstaining?
Yeah.
It'll be carried forward as a recommendation to full council. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So we will move forward to item 10, which is our delegated authority to the Chief Executive during the summer recess. And I'll pass back to Ellen for that report.
Yes, very briefly, through you, Chair, this report seeks approval. Thank you.
Proposed by Councillor Erie, seconded by Councillor Farrell. Thank you. So moving forward again, item 11 is our strategic rail report, and I'm going to pass to Rachel for that.
Thank you, Chair. Just as really an update report, members, to update you on the work of the Strategic Rail Working Group, which has been in operation really from 2021. And it provides in the report a detail of what the Rail Working Group has been doing over the past years and months. Looking obviously at working with TransLink and DFI, holding a strategic rail review workshop, engaging with stakeholders, and also input into the strategic rail review consultation. So really, I suppose, just to be quick, the summary today is that we generally would update to the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee the minutes of the previous meeting, just to keep everybody informed of the discussions that are going on in the Rail Working Group. So they're attached to Appendix 1. And also we have moved to make the next date for the next Rail Working Group, which is in September. And just I'll get the date there in front of you. It's just in key issues there. Sorry, Chair, I'm scrolling down. On Thursday, the 21st of September, and it's in the members' diaries. Just to sort of note that in your diaries, it's an all-member working group, as you'll be aware, so everybody can attend. And we're hopeful in that meeting that we may have some information on the strategic rail review. So it'll be a substantive meeting as well too. So the notes are there for your information, and suppose just so that you are up to date in the work of the Rail Working Group and you can endorse the progress to date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Duffy, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rachel, for the report. And it is a really comprehensive report encompassing all the work that has taken place over the last number of years. As a city and district, and indeed the Northwest City region, we do have huge rail ambitions which are outlined within the report. It is hugely important in terms of our development here in the Northwest region, in terms of our connectivity and economic development. So in terms of the work that's going on, I think the approach that we have taken has been a very good one in terms of the multi-partners, all members and cross-border elements to it, because of the whole rail ambitions in terms of Derry to Belfast, Derry to Dublin, and then that western corridor down towards Galway. I think the real ambitions are very real and very tangible and achievable, but we do need to see the outcome of the strategic rail review, and I will look forward to the meeting in September to see if we have any progress on that. I know that it was sitting on the Minister's desk, and unfortunately, as we don't have a Minister, it might be very difficult to progress it, but I do look forward to seeing what is actually contained within it. So in terms of the report, welcome it and happy to propose it. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report as well. And just to commend our council officers for, carrying the case for rail development everywhere and do all them discussions in terms of our strategic growth. We need to push that everywhere and with every partner, and I think we're doing that. And that's absolutely vital. And we obviously need to. Our ambition is to expand our dairy network and our northwest network and to see rail developed on a first-class basis right across the island. And it is very, very frustrating that the strategic rail review hasn't been published yet, and it's disgraceful in some ways, because that is holding up our ability to move forward on some of the on our vision and our ambitions, and hopefully that will be published despite the fact that the DUP continue to hold down the government and stop a minister from greenlighting its publication. I did have a couple of questions. Well, one is, if it is the case now that the dairy to Coleraine upgrade is moving forward, that's to be welcomed. It's obviously long delayed, but from the report, it seems like that is moving forward. Two, is there any update on the issue around Clanmill and the proposed development on the Victoria line? Because obviously that will inhibit our ability to develop, our rail network down to Dublin. So if there's an update on that, that would be great. But obviously look forward to the next working group meeting. And thanks for the report and the efforts that Council is putting in around this.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. Second the proposal and welcome the continued ongoing collaboration, which has been pointed out is very strongly a total Northwest collaboration, cross-border collaboration, as we know, and augments actually the demand that the A5 as such get underway, and that we have a proper transport system for both freight and people operating within this part of Northern Ireland and the island as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Councillor Mini.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the rest of the contributions from fellow members. I think all has been rehearsed here, but I think, from my perspective and the SLP perspective, would be the frustration that we can't get access or can't get the publication of the main document in time, which is the rail review. And on that note, I think it's incumbent on me to express that if a certain party gets back to work again, we might get back and get this document published, so we can all maybe move forward and try and progress our rail strategy for the north. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mini. There was a couple of questions on there, Rachel. I don't know if you want to come back on them, just from Councillor Harkin particularly.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Generally, just I suppose those issues were discussed at length in the rail working group in itself, and obviously the minutes are attached to Appendix 1. But I'm afraid, Councillor Harkin, we don't have any further update, but we're hoping that come September there will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So at this stage, the recommendations on the report have been proposed and seconded. I haven't had anybody speak against them, so instead of that passed, and we'll move forward to item 12, which is
the recommendation, item 12.
Okay. Can I read the title of the report first? The restricted list of health and safety training providers that's been proposed by Alderman Hussey, and I pass to Paula for the report. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so that's proposed and seconded, and we'll move forward. The next block of items, item 13 to item 18, are open for information. I'm going to take them as a block if anybody wants to come on those items. Councillor Duffy, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come on item 17, which is the Executive Office public consultation on the provision of free period products. I note that the report is there for information and gives the links if people wish to respond. I would, however, like to propose that council actually puts in its own response to the consultation. I'm happy to work with whoever within council will be working on it. I think as a council area, we were the first on the island of Ireland to implement this policy. And I think as forerunners in terms of that, we should be putting in our own response. I think that period poverty is still very much a live issue. I think that period products should be made available within all our public buildings. So I would very much like council to put in its own response as well. So if I need to make that as a proposal, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, if you want to just, are you on online? No? Can you send it through just for the wording? If that's okay, if you can send it through to Paula. I'm happy to second the proposal, just in that vein. Would anybody like to speak on that item before? No? Okay, I'll just let you get it. That's proposed and seconded. We're happy enough, just to get the wording through for Paula for the minutes. Councillor Tierney, you wanted to come on under items for information?
Yep, thank you, Chair. I have two items, number 15 and number 18, in correspondence, but if you're happy to go with 15 first.
Are you selling tickets for Kelly Clinic Cricket Club?
No, I'm not, no.
Alderman Breslin, if you're looking to speak, you need to come in through the chat box. Otherwise, if you could turn your mic off just so we can continue. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 15, I think, is something that should be welcomed. It's a report to encourage local companies to avail of council tenders, something that I think should be welcomed. Within the report, it outlines the steps that council are going to take to try and encourage local businesses to put in for tenders. Some of them are very interesting and hopefully will be extremely successful. I think there's a fair bit of work there to do in relation to small and medium-sized businesses. I've spoken to businesses over this last while, and there's a number of issues that keep coming up as to why local businesses don't apply for tenders. And I think if we're serious about this report, then we have to address the issues that they are raising. One particular issue is that companies feel that when there is a tender out or when they're being encouraged to respond to a tender, that they're only being encouraged to respond because council need to get a certain number of quotes to allow that to go ahead. I think it's 3 particular quotes. They say that, and it's been reported to me from a number of companies, that they know before they even put on the tender that they're not going to be successful, but they have to do it. And the officer, they're being encouraged because they have to. There's a certain process that has to be followed. That's a big blocker for certain companies, and I've spoken to some of them, and it's a huge problem. Which is why now many of them won't bother applying for tenders. Which, if you take that to its final conclusion, is the reason why we're having to do this particular piece of work. The other big blocker for companies, and I sometimes can't get my head around it, this council, in my opinion, should be supporting small and medium-sized businesses to try and grow and to try and grow their turnover and try and support them in doing that. One of the blockers for companies is if they don't reach a particular turnover, they can't even apply for a tender. I don't understand why that is in it. And I would like to get a response from officers as to why, if your turnover is not above a particular figure, you're not even eligible to apply for that particular turnover, even though you may be starting out small business, trying to grow and trying to build your customer base. And with a company, with an organisation the size of council, showing that they're supporting by buying that particular product from a local company would not only allow that company to grow, but would show that council have a confidence in that company and hopefully would attract further customers as well. Why is that? And why do we do that? Why is that a particular blocker within the system? Why is it scored within the tender process? I don't understand it. If we have a chance to give a local company who's employing local people, who's keeping the money and the local economy a chance, why does their turnover come under it? and potentially be beaten by a company outside of this council area 9 times out of 10 with a bigger turnover coming from Belfast? Why is that a blocker? And is that if that's there, is there some way that we can remove it or overlook it to in the interest of supporting local businesses? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Harkin, were you looking on this item or was it another item for information?
It's another item.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Alderman Hussey was looking to come on this one.
Thank you, Chair, and just to support Councillor Tierney on that particular issue. And indeed, the turnover issue, I wonder how many times you'll find that some of those who don't qualify via the turnover turn out to be subcontractors, you know, within this. So there's a middleman in there who's also making a cut. So it seems strange that we cannot go direct to the source if that source is available. Within the report, it talks about 108 SMEs who engage in a one-to-one with suppliers. We have a list of some of them there. Would it be possible to see the full list? Because I'd like to, as you'll understand, I'd like to see, you know, have we got SMEs right across the council district who have engaged in that particular process? So if that list of 108 can be revealed, obviously at some stage, obviously we'll have a better picture of the spread, the impact of that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So just maybe generally with regard to the first point, if members encounter any company whatsoever in this council area who have responded to a tender and feel that they're unclear as to why they haven't been successful, or feel that for some reason they've just been asked to take part for a numbers exercise, then I would strongly ask them to contact the officer team and we will provide feedback. If they're satisfied with that feedback, then bring it to my attention, because that's not the case. And we need to prove and be very clear to companies that that is not the case. We do wish to encourage as many local companies as possible to apply. So if there's a perception for some reason among some sectors that that is what's happening, then please ask them to contact us. The second issue with regard to turnover, it's a very good point. Turnover should be proportionate. Turnover requirements should be proportionate to the service that has been requested. It's an important evaluation criteria when you're selecting a service provider or a contractor, because obviously turnover is a measure of financial ability, of scale, of ability to manage and bankroll a project, but it shouldn't be punitive. So if there are instances, for example, where we are requesting turnover figures that is disproportionate to the service that is being requested, then we should review that. So I'm happy to take that comment on board, and I'm happy to go back, speak to our procurement manager to make sure that turnover thresholds that we're submitting in tender documents are proportionate to the service that we're tendering. It is an important measure. It can't be eliminated, but it should be proportionate. And the third query, I'm happy to follow that up and get that list out. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Content enough for that, Councillor Tierney?
Chair, thank you, and thanks to John for that response. In relation to the second point, turnover, I suppose we'll wait and see what comes back in terms of are they proportionate, and if that's going to be reviewed, then that's great. In relation to the people actually applying for the tender, and whether there's a perception out there, that's the perception. And the reason that I raise it here, John, is because although there's a number of key things that officers are going to do to encourage local companies to try and apply for tenders, there's a confidence building exercise, I think, that council need to go through to encourage those to do it, to show people that you're not just playing a numbers game, that council do want to give tenders out to local companies. Alderman Hussey raised the point about the 108 companies which did engage. I think that, and he's right to ask, you know, how far is that spread across the council district and all of that. Fully take that on board. I would be, and I suppose there's no metrics of even doing this, but how many didn't engage? How many local companies didn't engage? And I think that answers a number of questions as to why they didn't engage. And it takes me back to the first point that I've raised. I don't think that there's confidence that they're being considered correctly or they're being valued correctly by this council. And I think it's something, and it's definitely a perception and a mindset that we need to change. And I genuinely hope that this exercise goes a long way to try and correct that perception, because, and I know it may not be nice for officers to hear, but there is that perception out there with local companies. I'm hearing it back from a number of them, particularly local people who are literally trying to establish a business and get moving, and have done well, but just need that further step. They push on, and they don't feel that this council genuinely is prepared to put their faith and their trust in their services, and that's a big blocker for them. It's something that we need to address, and I hope that it does be addressed coming out of this exercise. Thank you.
And Chair, just to reiterate again, that if any member is approached by any company who holds that perception, then as a key action today, let's meet that company and let's discuss the issue directly with the company and ensure that that perception is turned around. And we will change our practices if necessary to change that perception.
Thank you for that, John. So we'll move forward. Is that okay, Councillor? I know you had another item. If you want to come ahead with that, and then I've got 2 more indicated speakers.
I'm not going to bore you by starting again, but
Save them from
all right. Maybe they didn't want to hear what I was saying online, maybe. But it's in regards to the bill that was going through the House of Commons last night, which was to ban public bodies from imposing sanctions or direct boycotts of foreign countries. This council has passed a number of motions. I don't actually know how many over recent years. We have, as councillors, have attended numerous demonstrations in the city, and possibly people have attended them further afield in support of ongoing matters overseas, shall we call them, that this council have taken a stance against. The British government are trying to put a bill passed now to say that we're not allowed to form our own opinion on these matters. And if we do form our own opinion on these matters, they're not going to take them into consideration anyway. It's my view that that's wrong, and we should be writing to the particular minister outlining our opposition as a council to that particular bill. I was delighted and glad to see that our MPs last night voted against the bill. And we'll continue to do so if it comes back, which I hope it doesn't, but I think it's something that we need to raise and make sure that they know that this council is opposed to this bill for a numerous amount of reasons. Thank you.
If you're making that as a proposal, will you send it through to Paula just to make sure she's got the right wording, please? And Councillor Jackson, you're not going to speak on the same item.
Yeah, good Chair, and thanks for Councillor Tierney for raising it. And And I'm glad to see the local MP voting against this, but I suppose it remains to be seen how effective that is, because there's a swathe of legislation that's gone through British parliaments that don't care, and around, like, there's massive swathes of legislation that's gone through the British Parliament that's going to decimate life here, and it's going to restrict our ability to show solidarity with campaigns right across the world. And there's people's eyes are being opened to state violence right across the world, and in particular in the Middle East. And the British government are trying to stop us taking any action or showing any solidarity. And some people believe that the answer to all of this is to be making a protest vote within the British House of Commons. We don't believe that that's a realistic solution. We've got real alternatives. But just to focus on the legislation that's going through, because it's my understanding, and I proposed a BDS motion going back many years, and this council endorsed it. And we've always had a proud history of standing up and standing alongside the people of Palestine and oppressed people right across the world. But it's been really frustrating because we couldn't implement the BDS policy because of legislation that already exists here in the North, the Miscellaneous Provisions Act, which doesn't apply in Britain. But the Miscellaneous Provisions Act restricts us from implementing the BDS policy anyway. And so I'm not entirely sure around that this legislation is going to make one jot of difference to this council area. I'm surprised the local MP isn't aware of that. But in relation to the letter that was received, the letter highlights that the legislation is going to prevent divisive behaviour that undermines community cohesion. Now, this is common. This letter is coming on the back of the biggest Israeli military occupation or operation in 20 years. In Jenin, where there's the British or the Israeli military going in and are steamrolling refugee camps. There's over 3,000 of the most vulnerable people on this world are being persecuted by an aggressive, oppressive Israeli regime. And the BDS campaign hasn't focused on any country or any. That we were very, very explicit in terms of the motion that we brought to this council, is that we want to focus or divest away from any companies or any organisations that are complicit in human rights violations in Palestine. And that's and in relation to the letter that's come out, it does say that it's focused on foreign countries or territories. Our approach to the BDS wasn't focused on foreign countries or territories. It was on any companies, any specific companies that are complicit in the violations of human rights in Palestine. But one of the hypocrisies within the letter that's come out is that it does say that the British government intend to use the power that they've given themselves to exempt Russia and Belarus from these boycotts and divestments. What's happening in Ukraine by the Russians is absolutely no different to what's happening in Palestine by the Israelis. And that's something that our council have always been strong on. And whether the British government, and if we are agreeing the rights to a British MP, then I would suggest that we include that line, that we do not agree that we feel very strongly that what's happening in Ukraine by the Russians is absolutely no different to what's happening in Palestine by the Israelis. So I would just urge that we include that, or suggest that we include that. But just on a final point, Chair, the letter from the British minister made a point that they don't want to restrict anybody's free speech. This legislation is about creating consistent foreign policy. We need to be clear from this part of the island that we have no desire to be linked with the foreign policy of a British Tory government, because it is absolutely disgusting, and that has been, the whole world has been very clear on that. So the letter, and I trust that this legislation is going through. It isn't going to have much of an impact on us as a council, because we're already constrained on what we can do. But it is worth pointing out the hypocrisies within the British foreign policies and what they're attempting to do to councils in England, Scotland and Wales in relation to this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Donnelly was looking on, then Councillor Farrell on the same item. We do have a proposal. I'm just minded that it's not been seconded at this stage. Councillor Farrell's going to second it. Go ahead, Councillor Donnelly.
I'm a good Chair. No, leave it to Councillor Farrell. They second it. A lot of what's already been said by Councillor Jackson was some of the stuff, most of what I was going to say. But we talk of, the hypocrisies there. The British government started a war regarding weapons of mass destruction that weren't there. And that cost millions of people their lives. And we just had a previous conversation in this council about British Armed Forces cadets or something or other. They're selective on what side. This is effectively telling us which side that we must take in wars. And in all wars, it's mostly innocent people who suffer and cannon fodder. Regards the Palestinians, the world has turned a blind eye. What's going on, and whatever your views of what's going on in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, there was mass support for the Ukrainians. Flags were flowing from the Brandywell. Flags were placed on the altars of churches. Children were told to dress in Ukrainian colours. And at the same time this was happening, Palestinians were being slaughtered. And the world turned a blind eye because Big Brother told them, forget about it, there's nothing to see. It is interesting that they have Russia, exempt Russia and Belarus. But what we have here is, we have to look at what's behind the war. Russia. And it was being planned. It's effectively a NATO war. It's been planned. Special forces, both British and American and others, have been training Ukrainian forces, and this has been building up for years. For years, the Ukrainians, which is a fascist, and some of their neo-Nazi battalions, were killing with impunity Russian-speaking citizens in their thousands, and the world turned a blind eye. This is effectively telling us what we can say, which death is that we have to ignore, and which deaths we have to take action against. And when people talk about a democratic process, and it's been said a number of times in the last few weeks, this is Big Brother effectively saying, you're on this side and get over it. But it's absolutely wrong. There's a hierarchy of death regarding this. And as Councillor Jackson said, we've had corporate positions in this council of supporting the Palestinian cause and the BDS, which is a very, very peaceful and legitimate form of action. And now we're being told that we can't do that. and it's absolutely shameful for this to happen. But however, it's not surprising. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Farrell, I'll give you the last word on
Yeah,
it.
thanks, Chair, and I'm happy to second Councillor Tierney's proposal. This is an attempt by the British government to silence councils, and this council supports the people of Palestine, rejects the actions of the Israeli state, and it is important that our voice is heard and it's not silenced by the Tory government in London. And I find it funny that in this letter they say that it's important that the UK speaks with one voice. It's important that the Tory government has a coherent foreign policy. The foreign policy of the Tory government is not widely supported across this city and district. It's not widely supported in this chamber. The Tory government does not speak for us on any issue at all. It doesn't speak for us on Palestine or the opposition to Israel. So we should reject this. So I fully support and second Councillor Tierney's proposal. In terms of Councillor Jackson's amendment, with the greatest of respect, I think you've read that section of the letter wrong. When they say that Russia and Belarus will be excluded from this ban, that means that councils will be allowed to impose sanctions against Russia and Belarus. Yeah, so that's fine. Pardon? No, what I mean is that's going to happen, so it's not like that Russia's good here,
The point is that the British government is telling us that Russia's bad.
Yeah, no.
And it's okay. It's okay.
I get that. The way that Councillor Jackson communicated it, I felt that he was saying that Russia, the actions of Russia, that councils couldn't condemn them. They can condemn them. Yeah.
They're the exact amendment that I proposed, and I know I haven't sent it on. So, but it was to include the line and to remind this minister in Britain that the view of our council is that the atrocities and that are taking place on a daily basis in Palestine we view them the same as the atrocities that are taking place on a daily basis in Ukraine. So we believe that it's hypocritical that they've told us which countries were allowed to boycott, whilst the crimes against humanity, in our view, are the same right across the board. So I understand where Councillor Farrell's coming from, but that's the very point that we were making, is that we don't accept the fact that a British government can tell us which country or which atrocities that we have to ignore, because we won't be ignoring what's happening in Palestine, regardless of what anybody in London tell us.
So, Chair, through you, effectively what they're saying is that if the British government are telling us it's okay to ban or have a boycott against goods or companies involved with Russia, then why is it not okay to have a ban with companies or goods involved with Israel, which we currently have, which is the point that we've been making as well. It's the same thing, only a different way around.
Right. Okay.
In reality, we're both opposed to the introduction of this type of bill.
Yep.
Which is what's on the screen. And if we're opposed to it for the same reason, I don't understand why it needs an amendment.
It's not an
We want
amendment. I
to
think the
point out
point
the
is to make sure that the wording's included. It's not amending. It's still going to be in the writing of the letter. It's to include it within the content of the letter as opposed to amending the fact that we're going to write a letter. Does that make sense? Alderman Hussey, go ahead. And then we're going to try and bring this to.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting contributions. I don't agree with Council's policy with regard to Israel or Israeli companies, as has been pointed out by Councillor Jackson. But I do support Council's right to corporately have that opinion. I'm waiting on the BDS with regard to Russia to come forward to Council, which I can happily support. We'll see when that comes. What does concern me is this is our will end. You know, this is 1984. This is the government saying that they will punish public bodies if you say something against the government. Yeah. Now, to me, that is totally anti-British. That's not what the United Kingdom and Britain stands for, in my opinion. So I do have concerns about the bill. At this moment in time, I will be abstaining on this motion. I'll wait for it to come through then to full council. But I can understand where the motion's coming from. And if anyone in this chamber knows me anyway at all, if somebody wants to be rebellious, I can be that sort of person. And if people in the chamber and the council corporately wish to have a different view to government, they're entitled to do so. So I do have concerns about the bill, but at this moment in time, I will be abstaining. And I'd love to know what they mean by punish public bodies. If the headmaster is calling you to the office, sort of thing. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hussey, or Alderman Hussey. Now at this stage, obviously you've indicated you're going to abstain. I'm going to just bring it to a vote just to be clear. Councillor Herkin had indicated they speak on a different item. I have him on my list just for that. So I'm going to pass to John for a vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Alderman Breslin.
Against.
Alderman Cook.
Against.
Alderman Hussey.
Abstain.
Councillor Boggs.
Or.
Councillor Donnelly.
Or.
Councillor Duffy. Councillor Farrell.
Or.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney.
Or.
Councillor Jackson.
Or.
Councillor McGinley.
Or.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Farrell. Councillor Tierney. Chair, I've recorded 10 for, 2 against and 1 abstention, so the recommendation goes forward.
Thank you for that, John. So we will move forward. The next indicated speaker I have under open for information is Councillor Heaney.
Thanks, Chair. And I want to focus on item 13. And I focus on another piece of legislation that's coming through Westminster that will be absolutely disastrous for this council area. At the Northwest Regional Development Group, the last meeting there that I attended, this was a major focus of the discussion in relation to the proposed visa that the British government are prepared to impose on travellers coming from south to north, which they have to both apply for and fund. Just before this meeting, I took an opportunity to take a wee skate over to the Dairy Girls exhibition just to see what it was like, and it was thronged with tourists. And on the way in this meeting, I had to negotiate my way past about 30 tourists who were gathered downstairs. So this town is thronging with tourists at the minute, and this proposed legislation is likely to destroy all that. The visitors that are here at the minute simply wouldn't come if they were being forced through this bureaucratic process that they're bringing in under the pretense of protecting their borders. So, and that's only one element of it. There's students in this town, foreign students who are learning English and other things, who are currently based over the border in Donegal. You essentially have to apply for a visa to go to school. as they're studying this site. So it's an absolutely ridiculous situation. I know I raised it at full council, but I thought I'd take the opportunity to raise it here again in committee because it's such a huge issue. Just as our tourist industry is starting to go where it needs to go in relation to the prosperity of this place and the amount of people that are here, and we're now only at the beginning of the summer. The British government proposed to bring in this new system, which will totally overturn it. So I know this council will do all in its power to make sure our total opposition to this is done, and I made a suggestion at full council, but generally appealing to all strands of this council and all the other bodies that people are sitting on to take all the action they can to try and prevent this. We need to be making representations to the Irish government, all their Oireachtas levels. So anything we can do to stop this needs to be done. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney. I don't have anybody indicating to speak on that item, so we'll move forward and those points will be noted. The last indicated speaker I have under the...
Yeah, before you move on, sorry, is there an action that's coming out of that? You know, we agree with what Councillor Heaney has outlined and supported it at full council and at the Northwest Regional Development Group. Absolutely. And we can, we also had to negotiate getting in here. Tourist industry in Derry-Strabane is booming at the minute. And we want to see it continue to thrive, but we would fully agree, but we're not clear what the action may have been. He's appealed to us to use our public bodies and all of that there, which we will do. But I think that the council needs to have an action coming out of this.
Well, if you want me to make a proposal in terms of that, then certainly in tandem with the previous discussion, this committee should certainly write to the immigration minister in this case, as far as I'm aware, to declare our outright opposition to what they're proposing to do. I made a different suggestion, but it wasn't a proposal at full council, just about a delegation. But I know that will need further consideration by the mayor and that. But from this meeting, I am happy to propose that we would write to the immigration minister and make our position very clear.
Thank you, Chair. And just speaking to the proposal, I accept the proposal, right to express our concern or opposition. Is it? Concern? Yeah. Yep. Opposition. And I think one of the issues is not the necessity for ensuring that you know who's travelling about. It's the methodology. Which is causing concern to many within particularly the tourism industry. It doesn't apply to UK citizens, it doesn't apply to Irish citizens, it's citizens from beyond. I mean, I do accept that there has to be some sort of control on borders. My own daughter has just headed off to New Orleans. She had a process to go through before she could actually go into another country. And, you know, it should also be the case within any country that we cannot have totally open borders of that nature. So to look at the methodology that is being used within this, I can support that. The current methodology should be opposed. It will restrict the issues that the tourism issues that are being talked about. I was interested, by the way, Mr. Tierney did say that he had to negotiate tourists coming in here, and he talked that it was going well in Derry and Strabane. How many tourists, I wonder, did they have to negotiate in Strabane?
Do you want to respond there, Councillor Tierney? Or do you want to speak on the item? I just noted you've seconded the proposal.
I think that might be a question for Visit Derry. I couldn't begin to probably work out how many tourists are in Strabane right now.
Okay, so we'll just get the proposal on the screen. We'll just give it a wee second for Paula to get the word in there. Okay, so at this stage, I haven't heard anyone speak against the proposal. I'm going to give the opportunity in case anybody does want to speak on it now that it's on the screen. But at this stage, it's sounding like it's going to be unanimous, so just give a chance.
Whose word was that?
Okay, so that's the proposal. It's been proposed and seconded. As I say, so far, everybody, it seems to be unanimous from the comments that have been made. Unless anybody wants to vote against or go to a vote. Amendment. Okay, what's your amendment?
To the opposition to the currently proposed ETA.
Do you have a seconder for your proposal or for your amendment? Not at this stage.
No. No seconder.
There's no seconder.
Second.
Happy to second. Okay, so I'll take that. That doesn't change. Okay. Okay. So that's proposed and seconded. I'm not seeing anybody an objection to that either. Is there anybody that wants this to go to a vote, or are we happy enough that we go ahead and action the proposal? Happy enough?
Unanimous.
Consider that unanimous, and we'll move forward. So I have one final speaker under the open for information, and that's Councillor Harkin, who's online. Is he online?
He wasn't online when I did the last vote. So.
Councillor Harkin, are you there? Okay, so we'll just move on. So that concludes the, go ahead, Alderman Hussey.
Item 16, the delegations. Members have heard me saying this before. Again, we're looking at delegations coming into committees. Now, there have been times, it's now 5:30, there have been times in the past where a delegation comes in and we would still be dealing with that delegation before we get on to committee business. I've asked that be looked at with the potential of a special council meeting, bringing in 2 or 3 of these presentations, separately or together, rather than pushing them in at the front of a committee meeting, especially a busy committee that is operating. I just wanted to mention that. And further, when we're talking about committee meetings, I know that the rotation will begin shortly with our other council chamber in Strabane. But like other members, I have been attending training sessions, and those could easily have been accommodated in Strabane as opposed to utilising, the full chamber here. And I would like to see a greater use being made of our chamber in Strabane when it's available and fully kitted out to accommodate the needs of both training and indeed our various meetings and working groups, etc. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, that second point is certainly something we can action. I do apologise. I'm just a little unclear as to what your first suggestion was in relation to delegations. That were you suggesting that they are moved to full council meetings?
Not a full council, not the full council meeting, but every now and again a special meeting. Bring a couple of delegations in rather than having them at the beginning of committee meetings. I have brought that up before. I understood that it would be looked at. Maybe it will in the future. I don't know.
Well, members, it's normal practice that where we can accommodate a delegation that is relevant to a committee, it comes to the committee. I can appreciate if we get into a scenario whereby there's maybe a backlog of delegations that we do need to group them together. But certainly at this moment in time, it's normally the case that delegations come to the appropriate committee. There are times where motions come forward from members requesting that particular notices of motion or delegations are invited into special council meetings. but certainly the current practice is that appropriate delegations, when they approach council officers, are directed to the appropriate committee. If that were to change, members, we would require some direction on that, clearly.
I appreciate that through you, Chair. But I mean, take, for example, our meeting with the Housing Executive. That's brought to a committee. But it's something that is of concern to every single member in the chamber. Therefore, you know, it would be, I know in the former council, we would have done it as a special meeting. Similarly with road service. Road service are brought in at the start of ENR. You know, and again, it's an issue which is of interest to all members. I know all members can't attend committees, but, you know, surely to goodness it makes sense for major inputs that we could have a special council meeting. All members are there to have their say and their input on the presentations.
Just before I bring Councillor Jackson on, just be minded that all members can attend all committees anyway. So if it's of particular interest to a member, they can attend where the delegation is presenting. Go ahead, Councillor Jackson.
No, it was to make that exact point, that there's nothing prohibiting any member attending any committee outside of the planning committee, and there isn't any deputations come to the planning committee. There's quite a few deputations that does, particularly road service and the housing executive, that have key roles within the public services of the Northwest. But there's other deputations that I've attended committees on the back, and I've learned a great deal from hearing from the work that's been done by those that came in and deputised to the committee. I understand Alderman Hussey's point in relation to having a condensed meeting where we hear all the deputations, but the current system works. I have every faith in the chair of all of our committees that if the committee members need a break, a comfort break, then that is allowed. But I'm just conscious that, like, we're going to the planning committee tomorrow. It's likely going to run on a couple of days. There's quite a lot of business that is done, and we've been elected to this council. They attend meetings and they be carrying out work. And if it means that we're taking an hour or a half an hour at the beginning of a meeting to learn from groups or organisations that are carrying out fantastic work, providing vital services within our council district, from our perspective, we don't see that as a negative, and we don't want to see that changed. We welcome every opportunity to meet and discuss with groups and organisations, and we don't want them to. We don't see the merit and sitting them to the side and creating some sort of a sub meeting of council. The business and all the business of this of council and the committees are of the utmost importance, and we see the deputations, the fit in within those committees. It works, and from our perspective, we don't see it as a burden. They meet and question and hear from groups or organisations within our city and district.
If I may respond.
Alderman Hussey, I'm going to ask you to be brief because you have
I will be
spoke on
brief.
the side. Thank you.
Chair, there's no intention of restricting access. In fact, I would actually say that having a special council meeting is promoting the ability of those groups when they come in. And I take on board, and I'm sure Councillor Jackson will attest to the fact that I do not flinch in my attendance at various meetings, etc. And he mentions the planning committee, full council. Both of those start at 2 o'clock. So perhaps the solution might be we start our committee meetings at 2 o'clock as well to allow for time for those presentations. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. I could nearly sympathise with Alderman Hussey if this was almost near the end of a council mandate. But it's only a couple of weeks ago that we all stood for election, to be elected to come here. And voluntarily, well, I voluntarily stood for election. I don't know about anybody else, but we wanted the public to send us here. It almost sounds now as if, you know what, we don't really want to come. So we're going to arrange it around ourselves to try and suit ourselves. The reality is we all knew what we signed up for. I think the current system works. I have to admit, sometimes I think the deputations are the most interesting part of the meetings, as opposed to the actual bureaucracy of council business. Councillor Jackson's pointed out, it's where you learn more about organisations that are coming in. Some of the deputations that come to Health and Communities, for example, are really, really intriguing, in my opinion, whenever you find out what some of the organisations are doing. From our point of view, the current system works. I have a bit of an issue with full council starting at 2 o'clock. I'm not supporting committee meetings starting at 2 o'clock as well. I think the process that we have works. And if it doesn't work for some people, or they think it could work better, maybe they should have thought about that before they stood for election.
I think all comments will be taken on board going forward. You know, at the end of the day, if there is changes that need to be made, it's something that can always be considered, but it's not being brought forward as a formal proposal to move all committees. You've already spoken.
Chair, I have to rebuff the suggestion that, you know, I'm reticent on this and that I'm objecting to people coming in. I'm trying to facilitate a far better way of them doing it.
As I said there, your views will be noted within the reports from this committee. So that'll bring that item to a close. That brings us to the confidential items for decision. Can I get a proposer and seconder to move on to confidential business? Councillor Boggs, Councillor Farrell, thank you. Let's give it a wee second to move over.